Hey guys, it's me. Never not gonna say it. It's me, Miss Fry. All right, I'm going to stay focused today. Not going off on any tangent. I think I went off on a tangent yesterday because I had just spoken to my parents and they're they're okay, but they're struggling a bit. And the furniture and the dishes reminded me of them. Anyway, I said I wasn't going to go off on a tangent, and there I just went. Okay, no more. Stop, Miss Fry. Chapter 26. Can't I stay here? Maggie asked her mother the day before she had to return to school. Susan could teach me like she teaches Ada and Jamie. Of course not, Lady Thornton said. We must not impose. Well, Susan wouldn't mind, Maggie said. You could pay her. Lady Thornton's eyes flashed. I think not. It would be fair. It's out of the question, Lady Thornton said. You're far safer at school. I nearly didn't let you come home for the holiday. Maggie's mouth dropped open. That would have been dreadful. Lady Thornton sipped her tea. It would have been prudent, she said. I looked it up. Prudent, acting with or showing care and thought for the future. I read the definition to Maggie. Oh, please, Maggie said. She just doesn't want to have to deal with me herself. Her life's easier when I'm gone. She hugged me. Take care of her for me. Me? Take care of your mother? Maggie nodded. Someone should. I can't, I said. I wouldn't know how. Besides, she'd never let me. Also, it was all I could do to take care of myself and Jamie and Susan. I didn't have room in my head to worry about Lady Thornton. Just keep an eye on her, is what I mean, Maggie said. Write me if you notice anything odd. I doubted I would notice anything new that was odd about Lady Thornton. Everything about her seemed odd to me. Please, Maggie said. I nodded. I'll try. Without Maggie, the house felt empty again. I missed her snoring in the bed across from mine. I missed having someone to ride with. I told Fred about Ruth. He spat on the ground. We don't want Germans here, he said. She's just a girl, I said. She's younger than the Land girls. The Land girls worked on the Thorntons' home farm in place of workmen who'd joined the army. Fred didn't like them. She's Jewish, I added. Does that make a difference? Fred looked at me down the side of his nose. After a long pause, he nodded. Some. Ruth loved horses. I didn't think someone who loved horses could do us harm. Well, that's a logical fallacy, Susan said when I told her. Hitler himself could love horses for all we know. Fallacy, a mistaken belief, especially one based on unsound argument. So Judaism is a fallacy? I brought my dictionary down to the sitting room. Lady Thornton laughed. I didn't know why. Of course not, Susan said. Religious beliefs are complicated. You can't call someone else's religion a mistake. I didn't see why not. I did see, however, that it was complicated. There isn't a right and a wrong, Susan said. There are just different ways of thinking. I think Mam's in heaven, Jamie said. He'd been playing on the floor with Bovril. I hadn't thought he was listening. I don't, I said. I think she went to hell. Fred had told me about hell. It was the opposite of heaven, the place bad people went when they died. In hell, Mam's soul would burn for all eternity, forever. Ada, Susan said, we don't know that. We can never know that. Your mother was clearly incapacitated. What's that mean? Susan considered. The root word comes from capacity, which means being able to hold. Your mother wasn't able to take proper care of you. She didn't have the ability or the capacity to do it. Maybe she just didn't want to. Susan said, I don't think anyone wants to be a horrible person. I also like to think that God shows mercy. What's mercy? I sounded angry. I was. Jamie said, being nicer than you should be. I had no idea how he knew that. Susan nodded. Yes, mercy means that you have the ability and the right to hurt someone or punish them, and you choose not to. Maybe it would be right for God to punish your mother for the way she treated you, but maybe God chooses mercy. I like to hope so. I picked at the dry skin around my fingernails. Susan hated it when I did that. Why? I asked. Susan sighed. Perhaps because I've always wanted mercy for myself. Or perhaps I just think it would be kinder. Ada, your mother can't hurt you now. She can never hurt you again. She could, though. Mam had never loved me and never would. And that would hurt forever. Jamie dropped Bovril into my lap. Everyone loves everyone once they get to heaven, he said. Bovril jumped down. He stalked away, twitching his tail. It would take getting to heaven for Bovril to love me. Chapter 27. Lady Thornton hated Ruth, and Ruth hated all of us. Not that I blamed her. A few days after Maggie left, in the middle of another silent, awkward meal, Ruth took a swallow of water, then burped. I could tell it was an accident, not an impertinence, but Lady Thornton rolled her eyes and sighed as though belching Germans were far too much for her to bear. "Oh, stop it," I said. "Ruth can't help belching, but you can help the rude noises you make." "Ooh, go Ada." Lady Thornton lowered her chin, looked down her nose at me, and glared. "I hardly think—" A sudden crash shook the table. I jumped. It came from Susan. Susan, who'd picked up her plate and slammed it down hard. "Ada's right," she said calmly. "Eleanor, you can help the noises you make. Also, I will not continue to be the referee in this house, nor the sole cook, nor do I wish to live in the middle of a battlefield. Bad enough there's a war outside our home. We don't need a war inside as well." Lady Thornton's mouth formed a thin, grim line. "I'm doing the best I can." "I don't believe so," Susan said. "When Becky died, I thought I was doing the best I could, too. Then the children arrived, and it turned out I could do better. It wasn't easy, but I could do it." She stood. "Let's take a walk," she said to Lady Thornton. "You and I. Children, when you're finished eating, I expect all three of you to do the evening work in a calm and cooperative manner." She grabbed Lady Thornton by the elbow and walked her out the door. Jamie, Ruth, and I stared. Jamie said, "Core." When we finished eating, Ruth cleared her place, then started to walk up the stairs. "No," I said. "You heard Susan. Come back here and help." Ruth sniffed. "I'm supposed to study, not do housework." I said, "I do both." Ruth said, "That's because you live here." Ruth lived here too, as far as I could tell. "Wash or dry," I said. "Jamie's going to bring in coal." Ruth looked at me. She folded her arms across her chest. I folded mine across mine, my arms across mine. Finally, Ruth looked away. "Dry," she said, and did. Susan and Lady Thornton returned while I was taking my bath. I came downstairs in my pajamas and dressing gown. "Ready for our story?" Susan asked. Jamie was curled up beside her. Lady Thornton sat as usual in her wing-back chair, knitting a stocking. Her face was flat and calm. I wasn't sure what to think. Susan sounded normal now, but at dinner she had not been normal. I felt anxious. "Are you finished being angry?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "And you survived it. You're okay." "Maybe." "Tomorrow," Lady Thornton said, "you and I are doing the shopping, Ada, together." Next morning, Susan taught us the way she always did. Lady Thornton came down late. "Good morning, Susan. Good morning, children. Ada, Jamie, Ruth." She said Ruth's name stiffly, but at least she didn't sneer. Ruth glanced up from her textbook. "Good morning," she said. "Ready, Ada?" Lady Thornton pulled on her gloves. In the village, the women in the queue outside the butcher's shop were all politeness toward Lady Thornton. If they were surprised to see her doing the shopping with me, they didn't let on. We stood for an hour. When we finally reached the front of the queue, the only choices left were beef shin bones or a ragged piece of liver. "Sorry," the butcher said, wiping his hands on his grimy apron. "All I've got." Lady Thornton peered into the glass case, then down at me. "Do you know how to cook liver?" she asked. I shook my head. Susan would, though. I didn't like liver. I thought it tasted muddy. I am all with Ada. Ugh, I do not like liver. If you guys do, that is amazing. I am impressed. It's an acquired taste, perhaps. I can do shin bones, I said. She raised her eyebrows. "Really?" She shuddered. I never thought of shin bones as something people actually ate. I said to the butcher, "A shilling's worth of the beef shins, please. You want them sliced like your mother gets them?" "Susan's not my mother." "Right," said the butcher. "You want them sliced like she gets them?" Lady Thornton looked amused. I gave the butcher a dignified nod. "Please." At home, Lady Thornton watched while I browned the shins and leftover dripping. She chopped carrots while I chopped celery and a slice of onion. Then I put the shins in a pan with water, added the chopped veggies plus salt and pepper, and some herbs and things, covered the whole mess, and stuck it into a slow oven. "That's it?" Lady Thornton asked. "It takes a couple of hours to cook," I said, "so we should put some potatoes in too, and maybe some apples. In wartime, you were never supposed to use your oven to cook only one dish. It wasted fuel." We found other things that could be baked and put them in the oven. "Well, what next?" Lady Thornton asked. "Well, I've got to go help Fred." I couldn't imagine Lady Thornton on the business end of a pitchfork. On either end, actually. Apparently neither could she. I want to finish some paperwork for the WVS, she said. We can just leave all this to Cook? I nodded. Well, that's not so hard, she said with a wide smile. I knew she didn't really feel cheerful. I knew she was pretending. I liked her better for being willing to pretend. As I pulled on my coat, Ruth came in from outside. Where are you going? She asked. Stables, to do chores. Can I come? I looked at Lady Thornton. She pursed her lips. I shook my head. No. Beef shins are just about the least expensive kind of beef you can buy, but if you cook them right, they taste lovely. By the time I got home from the chores, the whole house smelled savory and good. I took the leftover oatmeal from breakfast, formed it into lumps, and dropped them into the stew's gravy. Just as I hoped, they swelled and turned into something like dumplings. As I was finishing, Lady Thornton walked in. Why didn't you let me know you'd come back? She asked. I would have done that with you. I hadn't even thought about it. I wasn't used to Lady Thornton helping in the kitchen. She said almost apologetically, it wasn't ever part of my training to learn to cook, you know. When I was growing up, before the First War, girls of my class were expected to assume we would hire a cook. I didn't reply. Was I supposed to feel sorry for her? She wouldn't have hired me to be her kitchen maid before the war, not me nor any girl like me who grew up poor in the London slums. I started to take the potatoes out of the oven, one by one, using a towel to protect my hands. Lady Thornton said, I suppose where you grew up, you often ate beef shin. I said, we could never afford beef shin. We were lucky to get bacon once a week. Lady Thornton said sharply, I wasn't joking, Ada. I straightened and looked her in the eye. Well, neither was I. She looked as uncomfortable as I'd ever seen her. After a long pause, she said, was that true for your neighbors, too? I shrugged. Maybe. Probably. Most of them had fathers that worked, but most had more mouths to feed. Jamie wasn't any skinnier than the rest of the kids his age. Dirtier, maybe, but not skinnier. I sliced the potatoes open and arranged them on plates. Lady Thornton spooned beef shin stew over the steaming potatoes. What about you? She asked. Were you worse off than Jamie? Even now, thinking about it made me want to send my mind far away. I stayed in the one room, I said. I never left it. Lady Thornton paused, her spoon dripping stew. Susan told me that once, she said. I didn't believe her. Susan always believed me about Ma'am. I never thought a mother could be like that, Lady Thornton said. Cold, yes, I've known unaffectionate mothers. My own was quite remote, but not evil. What you describe is evil. I said, Susan said she was incapacitated. Lady Thornton nodded, very much so. That night, while we ate beef shin, Lady Thornton asked Ruth quite civilly, doesn't sound right when I say it, in a civil manner, how her studies were progressing. Ruth swallowed and returned a civil answer. Later, as we were washing up, I overheard Susan thank Lady Thornton for the meal. Don't thank me, Lady Thornton said. I'm beginning to learn how much I never realized I didn't know. I know how that feels when you just realize, oh my God, I thought I knew some stuff, but I have so much more to learn. It's an overwhelming feeling, but it's kind of a, if you look at it on the bright side, kind of an exciting thing. Like, oh, all right, more to learn. Big world out there. That's cool. Okay, we'll do chapter 28 and 29, maybe 30 tomorrow. I like what's just been happening. Like, it feels a little bit like there's a kind of a thawing. Like there's some shift that's happening. Lady Thornton with Ada, with Ruth, Lady Thornton and Ruth. Like, something is reworking itself. Maybe thanks to Susan and maybe thanks to Ada. So we'll be talking about that. Okay, you guys. No fort today. I don't know how to do it, so you guys gotta let me know. Okay, I'll see you soon. See you tomorrow. Bye. Miss you. I miss you. I still miss you. It's Wednesday, and I still miss you. That's never gonna change either. Okay.